Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be sharing some thoughts with you today on thinking ecologically about development. How can we do this using a global South perspective? Now, I'll begin with sharing a UN World Urbanization Prospect slide, which tells us that there's rapid urbanization going on, and we expect to see 75% of the world urban by 2050. Where is this urbanization going to take place? In the global South, in Africa, in Asia, in parts of Latin America, not in the global North. Nature plays a key role in the development of cities in the global South. And as we've seen, there are environmental issues everywhere with waste, issues of global heat islands, smog, floods. But human nature relationships are also particularly strong in the global South, with people praying to trees and with animist traditions, with children playing around trees, with the grazers and low income communities and urban communities fighting for conservation. So, human nature relationships are also particularly strong in the global South. So, we can't think about development and sustainability issues in the global South context, especially with their dense populations and peculiarly connected ways of life and strong connections between human and nature, people and nature, without being able to think ecologically. Now, that's very nice to think about, but in reality, what is happening? If you look at the data and the theories, there's a clear flow from the global North. And a paper that we did in 2018 in Nature Sustainability looked at the top cited urban sustainability papers over a decade of work, the top 1,000. What you see that the top citations come from authors from the global North, and they're based on studies of the global North. That's the overwhelming ground. What comes from the global South? South Africa, other global South countries, India, 0.5% of this research comes on global South cities or from global South authors, right? And that kind of research in cities, let's say in Sweden or the US or in the UK, will not tell us how to govern cities in Kenya or Uganda or Brazil or India or in China. So there's an urgent need to decolonize and diversify sustainability research. Now, this is something we've been focusing on for several years. I wanted to share with you some research from my own experience working on Indian cities and forests. And for the past 15 years, I've been focused largely on Indian cities. So 4 examples of global South based lessons that we can think of. Okay. The first one, informal settlements or slums are often directions of development action. These people need to be developed, they need to be given ways to get into modern life, infrastructure, electricity, etc. What we have found is that informal settlements are actually hubs of ecological knowledge. And you find the greatest proportion of native species in Bangalore, for instance, my city, in slums. And you also significantly find that women are repositories of ecological knowledge. They know how to forage for wild plants. These plants provide them with nutrition, with ideas of how to gather seeds, how to propagate this knowledge. This knowledge is propagated women to women. So informal settlements are not just hubs of ecology and native species, but also of ecological knowledge. And that flips our narrative from being to be recipients of development action to be providers of ecological knowledge. So that's our first lesson. The second is that sacred spiritual traditions in many African, Latin American, and Indian cities are cultural nodes of conservation. And people actually work with trees, protect ant hills, monkeys, bat roosts, feed the ants. And these are spiritual and cultural ways of connecting with nature that maintain nature in extremely crowded places. It's a very different tradition, and you cannot learn how to do this from studies from the global North. Watching people from the global South in different, where there are different animist traditions of conservation, that's the only way you can understand this. The third is recent research of ours, which shows us that even in densely crowded cities where there are huge numbers of migrants and extremely heterogeneous communities, a site of nature, a place of nature, is a node of ecological placemaking, where migrant workers, original village residents, transgender communities, children with special needs, uh, IT sector, information technology workers, the wealthy, the poor, everybody comes together in these places, and it shapes their cultural connect to that city. So you might see a bird or a tree or a flower or butterfly that you've seen in your context, and that this ecological place becomes your place. And that then shapes community conservation of commonizing, of common action. And finally, the last lesson we found is that you need to go beyond the science and you need emotion for action. So public engagement plays a key two-way role. And here I'd emphasize the two-way because we do well understand the need to communicate science to people. But what we've seen in the global south context is equally important to understand people and learn from them their ecological knowledge and use that to structure our action. So these are some of the things we've been doing with with ideas of communicating to people. Two books of mine, for instance, recently, Nature in the City, which is a long ecological history of the city where I live, Bangalore, and Cities and Canopies, another collaborative book that I wrote with a colleague, which combines myth, riddles, science, history, sketches, art, games, to try and give people an experiential connect with nature and hope that that creates a conversation around conservation and development issues. With that, I'd really welcome more comments or discussions on how can we decolonize sustainability research and diversify sustainability research from different parts of the world so that 10 years from now, we don't end up with a graph of the kind that I showed you. Thank you.